many people are living, many men and women, children are living because of what President Bush has done.
Praise for President Bush from Zambia's First Lady as she joined him and Laura Bush for the opening of a new clinic this week. Africa has become a frequent stop for the former president, who's devoted much of his post-presidency to confronting the continent's biggest challenges. We met up with the former first couple in Tanzania to talk about their involvement in Africa, plus the secret surveillance program President Bush approved, and his highly unusual meeting with President Obama.
It was the rarest of road trips.
There's no question that Africa's on the move.
A meeting of the President's Club thousands of miles from home.
Laura and I are thrilled to be back in Zambia.
A commander-in-chief reunion in Africa. President Obama and former President Bush traveled separately across the continent this week, but they met in Tanzania at a memorial for victims of the 1998 embassy bombing.
It was an extraordinary moment to watch two U.S. presidents, especially you two, together here in Africa. What did you talk about when the cameras weren't rolling?
What a big pain the press is.
No, you probably agreed entirely with that.
We just chatted about his trip. He's at the end of the trip. I remember how tired I used to get. And I said, you got to be kind of worn out. And he said, well, he had a great trip, looking forward to getting back home. And I asked him about his little girls. Were they having a good time? He said, you bet. Because I remember bringing our daughters on some of these trips and how meaningful it was to be with them, but we didn't sit around and hash out policy.
Do you talk to him
not
much at all?
No, not really. He's busy.
He's busy,
and I'm retired.
And then you had this extraordinary moment with First Lady Michelle Obama.
Yeah, that was really great.
You have an opportunity to speak to your passions.
I always think it looks really great for our country, for our presidents and first ladies to be together, whatever their parties are. I think it's a really good example for the world.
There's something that you and President Obama have in common, and that is that you are both, it seems to me, a lot more popular in Africa than you are back home.
Well, I thought you were going to say because we married extraordinary women.
Well, that's true, too.
Great.
What do you make of that? You're greeted like something of a rock star here. He had these massive crowds like you've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, what's behind that?
We both represent a great country. People admire America, and Africans are thrilled with the idea that American taxpayers funded programs that save lives.
One of those programs, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, which President Bush signed into law 10 years ago, is now celebrating a remarkable milestone. 1 million African babies born HIV-free thanks to programs preventing mother-to-child transmission. Another 7 million with HIV are getting the drugs they need to survive.
I think this is one of his crowning achievements because of the commitment of the Bush administration and the American people. Millions of people's lives have been saved.
President Obama said this is one of your crowning achievements. You agree with that?
That's nice of him. I view it as an achievement of American generosity, and it has been an extraordinarily successful program, and I was honored to be a part of it. One reason we're in Africa is because we have found out and discovered that women are dying of cervical cancer. They've been saved from HIV through antiretroviral drugs, yet they're dying of cervical cancer. We think it's needless, and we're trying to do something about it.
That mission brought President and Mrs. Bush this week to Livingston, Zambia, a small town near the iconic Victoria Falls, one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Scraping the paint that got on the sink.
Where with a small army of volunteers, they rolled up their sleeves to refurbish and reopen a clinic.
So here's where we're going to screen in here. This room was really messy. And as you can see, we cleaned it up.
As part of the Bush Institute's cancer prevention Pink Ribbon, Red Ribbon campaign,
3.
women can now get screened here for cervical cancer. Paula Masanda came here with her niece on opening day after recently losing her mother-in-law to the disease.
She was the first lady screened and was healthy, is healthy.
When you meet them, you feel honored. And I'm happy today that I've done it. And I'm free.
Why Africa? I mean, was there a moment where this clicked for you? I mean, you visited
There's a
earlier.
moment because I was the president of the most powerful, rich nation, and pandemic was destroying an entire generation, and I thought it would be morally shameful not to act.
How important is Africa to your husband's legacy?
I think it's very important. I think it's really important for people to know that the generosity of the American taxpayer has saved lives here, and that now 7 million people are on antiretroviral drugs and are living full, productive lives. They can contribute to their economy. They are not leaving orphans, like what happened earlier in the big AIDS pandemic. I think Americans should feel great about it.
President Obama's been criticized to say he hasn't done as much for Africa as you did, that he's neglected Africa. Is that a bad rap?
President Obama cares deeply about whether or not people live on the continent of Africa. All I can tell you is that the State Department under his leadership and under the leadership of Secretary Clinton has been incredibly helpful in our efforts to deal with cervical cancer. It doesn't surprise me that presidents get criticized.
You saw that every once in a while.
Yeah, not from you, of course, John.
So what do you make? I know you're not into psychoanalysis. These are your critics who say that all this Africa work you're doing, that a big part of it is you're trying to make up for mistakes you made in Iraq or elsewhere, and this is... What do you say to that?
Let them continue to babble.
Not true.
I'm trying to think of the proper word. Absurd psychobabble.
Now, I saw a journalist in Zambia asked you about gay marriage and whether it is compatible with Christian values, and you had an interesting response.
I shouldn't be taking a speck out of somebody else's eye when I have a log in my own. I meant that I wasn't going to answer the question then, and I'm not going to answer it now in terms of the political question about whether or not, I just don't want to wade back in the debate. I'm out of politics. But I meant it's very important for people not to be overly critical of someone else until you've examined your own heart.
Have your views on this evolved at all? I mean, you were
Jonathan, you didn't hear my answer. I'm not going to wade back into those kinds of issues. I'm out of politics. The only way I can really make news is either criticize the president, which I don't want to do, criticize my own party, or wade in on a controversial issue. And I'm off the stage unless I'm promoting something I strongly believe in, and I believe that what we're doing in Africa is incredibly important, and will continue to do so so long as I'm ambulatory.
Well, I've got one that you care deeply about.
Yeah?
You tried very hard to get comprehensive immigration reform through. How big a missed opportunity will it be if it fails this time around?
I think it's very important to fix a broken system, to treat people with respect, and have confidence in our capacity to assimilate people. It's a very difficult bill to pass because there's a lot of moving parts, and the legislative process can be ugly. But it looks like they're making some progress.
Because that was one of your real frustrations, was not being able to pass that bill.
Yeah, I mean, I understand sometimes you get legislation through that you want. I was also frustrated we didn't pass Social Security reform. I thought the plan I'd laid out on both was reasonable, but sometimes it takes time for some of these complex issues to evolve, and looks like immigration has a chance to pass.
Is the party going to be really hurt if they let this die?
Well, the reason to pass immigration reform is not to bolster a Republican Party. It's to fix a system that's broken. Good policy yields good politics, as far as I'm concerned.
Your former spokesperson said, when you look at what President Obama's done on counterterrorism, this is basically the fourth Bush term. Are you surprised that President Obama's kept in place so many of your counterterrorism programs, including those he criticized as a candidate?
I think the president got into the Oval Office and realized the dangers to the United States, and he's acted in a way that he thinks is necessary to protect the country. Protecting the country is the most important job of the presidency.
A couple quick things before we go. How's your father doing?
He's great, thank you. To have him by my side during the opening of our library was the most meaningful aspect of the day. Grateful that President Obama and Presidents Clinton and Carter were there, but it was awesome to have President 41 there. Really awesome.
What's his legacy?
He is a decent, honorable man who served with great distinction. Legacy is ultimately decided with time. And so to ask a president, legacy is like, what are your dreams? Eventually history will sort it out. I have no desire, nor did he, to kind of try to battle in the court of public opinion to define something that may or may not be true over time.
And lastly, I saw you dancing. Did TV. I'm sure you saw this as well in Zambia.
Yeah.
Yes, I was in the back row laughing the entire time.
Wait a minute.
So what is it? We saw President Obama dance. I mean, Bill Clinton famously danced on an Africa trip here. What is it about this continent that makes presidents get up and dance?
In this case, I was joyful, full of joy, to be with women who were singing songs of praise and getting ready to enter a clinic that we had just refurbished, knowing full well, I knew full well, they didn't, I did, that the care they would get would more than likely save their lives. And so it was a joyful moment, and I got carried away by the Spirit.
Well, it was enjoyable. It was good to watch.
Whatever you do, don't show it on your
Oh,
show.
no, believe me, we won't. President Bush, Mrs. Bush, thank you so much for
Thanks,
taking
Jonathan.
time to talk with us here in Tanzania.
Appreciate it.
Jonathan,
Really
great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You bet.